What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel, and it's time to talk to you about my latest top 25. And sort of what I did with this one is I sort of went through, reevaluated how I put together my top 25 a little bit because I initially put together, just thought, I don't really like this. So I sort of went through, reevaluated sort of how I thought about teams, and we ended up with the top 25 that you are about to see here today. But before we dive on into that, I got to go through my little spiel and just thank you for all the love and support that I've continued to receive. And guys, again, we are so close to 2,500 subscribers. Literally, as of recording this video, just two away. If two of you that haven't hit that subscribe button yet could do it, it would really mean a lot to me. And hey, that goes out to anyone out there. If you're as big of a college football fan as I am, you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, please consider doing so. Again, doesn't really take a whole lot. And you can also like, comment, share. And again, thank you for taking time out of your day to simply watch this video. But otherwise, if you want to help support me in other ways, go give me a follow on Twitter or X, whatever you prefer to call it, at Tailgate829. I post about other content I create and just everything else I do in my journey to be a sports media professional. So I'd really appreciate a follow over there. But again, not going to waste any more of your guys' time. Let's dive on into this one here in my top 25. Again, sort of just reevaluated how certain teams look and my thinking and how I put together my top 25, and it spit out the list again that you are about to see. However, there are some pretty notable teams that got left out of my top 25. Most notably and probably most controversial would be the Texas A&M Aggies. Also, maybe the UNLV Rebels could be there as well. But for the Texas A&M Aggies especially, there were just some other teams I ended up liking a little bit better than them. And yes, if I had a 26 spot, it would go to that of the Texas A&M Aggies. They were in my poll last week. They struggled against Arkansas this past week, and not necessarily struggled. It was a very good back and forth type game. Texas A&M found a way to win it, and a good win at that for the Texas A&M Aggies. They have stayed ranked in the AP poll. Just some teams I ended up liking a little bit more, and that is why Texas A&M just fell out of my poll. But I mean, honestly, guys, there are so many quality teams. Like, if I was putting together a top 35, to me, it'd be really, really easy because A&M would be included in there. What about Nebraska? I know they didn't look that great against Purdue this past week, but they still went on the road in Ross-Ade Stadium, able to get the job done. Rutgers is undefeated this week, and Nebraska and Rutgers play each other this week. How about that matchup? Iowa's got a tough one against Ohio State this upcoming week, but the Hawkeyes, still a team that you can't look past, you can't discount, still a team that could break back into the top 25. Oklahoma State fell out after their loss this past week. They did not seem all too great, and there are some problems there with Oklahoma State that got to get figured out. Pitt's still sitting at undefeated. JMU, Liberty is some undefeated group of 5 teams along with UNLV. South Carolina is another team that I could have thrown on this list, and there are so many other really good quality teams. Even a team like Kentucky, even Arkansas, I think could be worthy of a top 25 mention, but none of those teams did end up making my top 25. So which teams did make my top 25? Let's dive on in. As usual, we will go from the bottom to the top. We start out with number 25, and just hanging on to the top 25 here is the Illinois Fighting Illini. It was really, really close for me between Illinois and Texas A&M for that final spot. And I actually am going to make one more correction here, one second. All right, sorry about that. I just looked at it and thought, wait a minute, I have two teams that I'd like to switch around, and I'll talk about why I did it here in just a hot second. But again, Illinois and Texas A&M, those were the two teams that were vying for that 25th spot for me. And really, I could even consider to go either way, right? Like, even sitting here now, I'm thinking, oh, should I have put Texas A&M in? I guarantee you if Texas A&M was in, I was like, oh, should I have put the Fighting Illini in there? I think Illinois has proven a little bit more than Texas A&M to this point that they are a legit contender within their conference, and that's just to speak on the volumes of teams that are in the SEC right now. I mean, Texas A&M is still really good, but Illinois just went on the road and pretty much went toe-to-toe with a Penn State team that is probably going to end up making the college football playoff, at least the way things are trending and being projected as of right now. Penn State, one of the better teams within the Big Ten Conference. Illinois hung with them. Illinois went on the road and beat a Nebraska team that looks to be pretty solid this season. Illinois went on the road, got a big win against Kansas, and I know the Jayhawks don't look too great right now, but Luke Altmaier is still playing well. That's an Illinois defense that was able to hold the Penn State Nittany Lions to, I'll get the exact stats here for you in just a minute. I mean, yeah, so, I mean, You see right there, only 135 passing yards, and now the rush defense for Illinois did really struggle. The rush offense for Illinois did really struggle. They could not get a whole lot going offensively at all, but this is an Illinois team that I still believe in. I still think is going to end up being a really good team within the SEC, or not the SEC, within the Big Ten. Again, them or Texas A&M. If I had a spot to maybe tie for 25, I'd probably end up having them tied for 25. But again, we don't do that around here. We got to pick one or the other. And I think Illinois barely hangs on to their spot in the top 25. But the other 24 teams ahead of them were no-brainers to me as teams that were going to make the poll. It was just dependent on sort of where they sat. Boise State is sitting here at number 24. Boise State has looked really good so far this season. Again, their only loss coming against Oregon, and Oregon is really starting to clean up their act and play a lot better football here as of late. But for the Boise State Broncos as a whole, I mean, Ashton Jeanty just continues to do his thing. They knocked off a previously unbeaten Washington State this past week. Ashton Jeanty might very well be the best player in college football this season, a front runner to go win the Heisman Trophy. And to me, Boise State, guys, is still that front runner for the G5 spot. They do not move from the previous week, as I believe I had them at number 24. If not, I had them at 25, and they jumped up one spot there. But Boise State sitting there at number 24. But a couple teams that were not ranked this past week have now back entered my top 25 poll, and Arizona is one of those teams. They got left out of the AP top 25 poll, guys, which I think is a mistake. They just went on the road and beat a top 10 Utah team that I know didn't have Cam Rising, and I know also did not play their best brand of football. But Noah Fafita, Tyrone McMillan, this Arizona defense stepped up big time. People are forgetting about Arizona just a little bit right now. I think they still proved that, hey, we can go compete in the Big 12 Conference. We are a team that can go win a Big 12 championship. We are going to be there at the end of the season. What about us? Again, there are a lot of really good players on the team, especially offensively, and Tyrone McMillan's one of the best wide receivers in college football. I think the AP poll made a mistake not ranking the Arizona Wildcats. I think they're still up there with some of the other contenders in the Big 12 Conference. Watch out for the Wildcats if you are anyone within the Big 12. Just knocked off Utah on the road. Again, I know no Cam Rising, but still a team to watch out for in the ranks of the Big 12. Indiana sitting right here at number 22. And again, Indiana was a team that, if I hadn't reevaluate ways that I make my poll, that probably would have missed my poll there, because not having them in my top 25 initially just felt kind of wrong. So again, that's where I sort of went through and reevaluated, and Indiana's in here in my top 25. Now look, I know Indiana has not played the best competition so far. In fact, the toughest game that Indiana played very well might have been the game this past week against the Maryland Terrapins. We'll go through who else they played here. They played FIU, Western Illinois, UCLA, Charlotte, and Maryland. Again, Maryland probably the best team that Indiana has played so far, because UCLA just has not shown us that they are really going to be super competitive this year. They hung with Oregon in there for a little bit, but then inevitably ended up falling off. Indiana's played great, and they look great in every part of a complete team. I think Indiana has, and Indiana was one of those teams at the beginning of the year that I did not project to do that well, just because I thought it would take them a little bit more time for the Curt Cignetti system to settle in. But you look at all the talented transfers, you look at everything that program has going for them right now. I mean, the schedule is going to start ramping up fairly quickly here, because still left on the schedule, you have to host Nebraska, you have to host Washington, you have to host the Michigan Wolverines. You go on the road in Columbus to play Ohio State the second to last weekend of the season. But this is absolutely a very manageable road for Indiana to be a sneaky team, to sneak their way into the college football playoff. Curtis Rourke has played well. It's a defense that's played well. Maybe a couple things here and there can get better, but when Indiana puts everything together, that is a legit team. That's a team that's going to make some noise in the Big Ten Conference, much like the Illinois Fighting Illini are this season. Watch out for the Hoosiers, man. I'm telling you, that team, when they put everything together, they are a legit threat. 21 is Oklahoma, and I don't have too much to say on the Sooners, because, did they get lucky against Auburn. Auburn just found a way to lose that game. Oklahoma capitalized off of it. They found a way to win, and the Sooners survived a road test in the SEC. But still some problems here with this team. They got to figure out that quarterback situation. I think the defense has to play consistently better throughout the entirety of the 60 minutes. But I mean, when I take a look at the Oklahoma Sooners, I still see a top 25 team. I still see a lot of the potential, especially offensively here. I still got them at number 21. I don't really have much more to say about Oklahoma. So let's dive on into the top 20. And again, not to punish Louisville, but they did lose this past week. There are a lot of other teams that won that I'm starting to like a little bit better, at least as of right now, that I like a little bit better. And that's why Louisville fell 4 spots here to number 20. Made it a battle with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, that's for sure, but it was just a game that you felt like Notre Dame controlled from start to finish. Now, Louisville was able to make it interesting there at points, but I mean, when you take a look at the way this game ended up panning out, I mean, Notre Dame, or I should say Louisville struck first blood. A very, very quick drive, and Isaac Brown able to get into the end zone. From that point on, though, it was Jeremiah Love, it was Riley Leonard, it was this Notre Dame defense that started to take control, especially in that first half. Again, fourth quarter, Louisville was able to put some points up, able to make it close. But the game beyond, I'll say the halfway mark within that first quarter, maybe even the latter stages of that first quarter, you really had no doubt it was going to be Notre Dame winning that one. Louisville sits here at number 20. Kansas State, what a big win they picked up there against the Oklahoma State Cowboys this past week. And look, you were looking for this this offense, especially that of Avery Johnson, to really step up in his quarterback play. And well, that's exactly what happened. Avery Johnson, again, wasn't super spectacular, amazing, but a 92.6 QBR, that's pretty damn good. 3 touchdowns, only 1 pick. 19 of 31 for 259 yards. DJ Giddens was still doing his thing. Avery Johnson had 2 rushing touchdowns. Kansas State put it all together there, man. But the team that beat them is going to be ahead of them. The BYU Cougars struggled a little bit on the road against Baylor late. They did control the thing early on and probably put this one to bed before Baylor could start their comeback. But you still sort of let your foot off the gas a little bit. But again, BYU, an undefeated team right now, looking really good. And I still have BYU above Kansas State. They're there at 18. But again, a big win for the Kansas State Wildcats. Defense played well. Ollie Gordon continues to be limited. He did average 5.1 yards per carry. So he did start running a little bit better, but no touchdowns for him. They forced 2 interceptions from Alan Bowman. Kansas State played really well. So did BYU. They both move up 4 spots. Iowa State moves up a couple spots there. They're up 2 spots to number 17. They shut out Houston. I think it was their first road shutout win since like 1990 something, maybe 2000 and something. I don't remember, but it was their first road shutout win in quite some time. The Cyclones, still a team that continues to impress there as well. They have remained undefeated. They are a Big 12 conference contender. But guys, I still got Utah being my top ranked team in the Big 12 conference right now. And look, I know they lost at home to an Arizona team that has had some struggles so far this season. But guys, I think you're discounting the Arizona Wildcats a little bit. I think that's a better team than a lot of people may be giving them credit for right now. And Utah, I truly do think is a much better, much different team when Cam Rising is at the helm. Again, has not been healthy, has not been ready to go for the most part this season. He has that hand injury to his throwing hand. Hopefully we will see him back soon, but Utah is a team that I think absolutely is a much better team with Cam Rising at the helm. And even though they lost that game to the Arizona Wildcats, I still think the Utah Utes are going to be one of, if not the best team within the Big 12 Conference. I know they did not have their best game against the Arizona Wildcats, but I'm still here telling all you fine people, I think Utah is still the team to watch out for in the Big 12, because I think when every Big 12 team is at its best, Utah is the best of the bunch, and that is why they're are here at 16 still, though. They fell 6 spots from where they were this past week. You get up here into the top 15, and that's where LSU is here at number 15. They played South Alabama this week. Not too much to take away from it, but LSU does have a lot of tricky games coming up here on the schedule. Now, I do not believe that they play next week. Yes, they do not play next week, but the schedule is going to start getting a whole lot tougher for LSU, a whole lot faster. You have Ole Miss. You have a road game against Arkansas, road game against A&M. How about Bama? Oklahoma is still up on the schedule. LSU's schedule is a gauntlet. They have a great time for a bye week right now, but things are going to start ramping up for LSU. And you just heard me mention Ole Miss. I mean, the Ole Miss offense, very disappointing in that first game. Or not necessarily in that first game, but in that last game against the Kentucky Wildcats. They just really were not moving the football the way that they had shown they have been capable of and were able to throughout the majority of the early part of the season. And I mean, losing that game to Kentucky, look, I penalize them by dropping 8 spots. Obviously, you penalize them because you lose to a team that you, quote, shouldn't lose to. But again, it's time to start talking about Kentucky just a little bit here, guys, right? Kentucky is a team that, look, I mentioned you can even throw in the honorable mention slide and you can make a case for them getting into the top 25. And if you have them in your top 25, I'm not going to argue with you because they've gone toe-to-toe with Georgia this year. And yes, the South Carolina loss does look a little bad, but even South Carolina is looking to be a pretty solid team this season. And you take a look at a team like the Ole Miss Rebels, a team that can still go make the college football playoff. They need to get that offense a little bit more consistent. Defense got to play a little bit more up to standard, but I still like Jackson Dart. I still like Lane Kiffin and his Ole Miss Rebels. I still think they're going to be a player in the college football playoff conversation. And again, a lot of moments for Ole Miss to get some statement wins and to really ramp things back up here. But again, just happen to like some other teams a little bit better than them as of right now. Two of them being Notre Dame and USC, the rivals there. So Notre Dame being here at number 13. I still really like the Fighting Irish. And look, I know they have the Northern Illinois loss, which doesn't look great now. I mean, Northern Illinois is 0-2 since they won that game against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And Notre Dame, well, they've been undefeated since then, including picking up a signature win against the Louisville Cardinals at home. And that was a team that beat Notre Dame last season. Notre Dame had to go on the road to play that game. They take revenge. They get Louisville at home. They're able to win that game. Notre Dame is a team that I'd still watch out for here, guys. They need everything to go right to get them a spot in the college football playoff, but they can absolutely do it. They've shown that they can do it. They've shown some really good talent so far this year. Riley Leonard is starting to play better at the quarterback position. Notre Dame moves up 2 spots to number 13. USC is up 1 spot here to number 12. Trojans had a little bit of trouble with Wisconsin, but Miller Moss and that USC offense really started to take control. And then that USC defense limiting Wisconsin, those second half adjustments really shined and showed out here for the USC Trojans in that previous game. Again, they jump up 1 spot here to number 12. Michigan, I know a lot of people are having Michigan in their top 10. As of right now, I'm not buying Michigan as a top 10 team. Yes, they have proven their physicality level. That defense is legit, and that probably definitely was not a question coming into this season. I think we knew that Michigan defense was going to end up being one of the better ones in college football this season. The offense has still got a ton of question marks, guys, and I know Kalel Mullings has been doing his thing, and he's fantastic. You figure that at some point Donovan Edwards is going to take a step up in his play as well, even though you look at his numbers and he hasn't been performing too bad himself, but the quarterback situation has got to get figured out. The offensive line is not as good as it was for Michigan last season, especially in pass protection when they do decide to drop back and throw the football. Michigan right now in a college football playoff spot, absolutely, but they got a lot of tough, interesting games on the road against Illinois, on the road against Indiana. Those have become games that you got to circle on the proverbial calendar and really watch out for. So Michigan just shy of the top 10. They're at number 11 for me. And in my sort of reevaluation, a team that took a big jump for me was Clemson. I'm starting to think that Clemson is a lot better than a lot of people, including the AP voters, are giving them credit for. I mean, look, yes, that first game against Georgia was a struggle, but Georgia, even with that loss to Bama, you'll find out where Georgia is here in just a second, is still a top 10 team, maybe even a top 5 team. Georgia is still one of the national title favorites. They are still one of the best teams in the country. And Clemson has walloped everyone beyond the Georgia game, right? They walloped App State. They went and walloped NC State. After a little bit of early struggles there, the defense really showed up in that game against Stanford, and Clemson was still able to go on the massive win there. Now, you do have to go on the road to play Florida State this week, but Florida State has not shown us that they really are that great of a football team this season. You still got Louisville on the schedule on the road against Virginia Tech. How about the road game against Pitt? South Carolina is still on that stretch of schedule there as well. But Clemson's dominated everyone they've played ever since that Georgia game. The offense has improved a whole lot from where it was last season. The defense could be one of the better ones college football has this season. I really like Clemson here in sort of my reevaluation. They're a team that jumped up well for me here. Missouri at number 9. I got to be honest with you. It feels like, again, Missouri still is earning and talented enough to be a top 10 team. Do I feel confident in Missouri sitting in my top 10? Not really, right? But who else do you put there? You can't put USC up there because then you'd have to put Michigan up there. I don't think Notre Dame is looking like a top 10 team right now. Ole Miss, after that loss, I ended up dropping them out of my top 10. Missouri, I'm just not too confident in the Tigers right now. Now, again, Missouri can absolutely prove me wrong this week. A big showdown with Texas A&M on the road in Kyle Field coming up this week. But Brady Cook and Luther Burden, I mean, there have been some games where Missouri has really struggled this year against teams that I feel like they should have beaten by a lot more than they did. Boston College was one of them, and I know the Eagles are a lot better than what people thought they were going to be this year. That Vanderbilt game, though, you started to get a little bit more concerned. Again, I'm not too confident, but Missouri has stayed undefeated. They were a pretty good team last season, and we've seen the flashes that Missouri is a top 10 team this season. So while I feel pretty okay about them being a top 10 team, I'm not confident in how much longer that's going to last for the Missouri Tigers if they continue to play the way that they have played so far. Miami dropped 2 spots there to number 8. I mean, they struggled with a Virginia Tech team that has really struggled again so far this season and not lived up to the hype that Virginia Tech came into the season with at all. But that final play, man, my goodness, you want to look at a pure example of how blissfully chaotic college football can be. Miami and Virginia Tech is your example right there. And again, I said this in my weekly takeaways video. If you want my opinion on it, I do think they got the call right. I don't think the Virginia Tech wide receiver controlled the football all the way to the ground. I think it was moving by the time he hit the ground. I think a Miami player touched it when they were out of bounds, or regardless, the process of the catch was not completed at all. And I think the Miami Hurricanes survive on the correct call. Now, again, you can have your own opinion on that, and that's fine. I did drop Miami a couple spots, though, because I'm starting to like Penn State and Oregon a whole lot more. Now, don't get me wrong. I still like the Miami Hurricanes, and I still think that's a really good team and absolutely the best team in the ACC right now. But, I mean, hey, just shows you no one is safe from the chaos this year. Oregon and Penn State both jump up 2 spots here to 7 and 6 respectively. They were both 8 and 9 this past week. If you want to flip those 2 teams, I really don't have a problem with it. Penn State just got a win over an, at the time, top 20 team. They've gone on the road and beaten a Power 4 side. Oregon, yes, you have a very legitimate non-conference win there against the Boise State Broncos. Oregon just went on the road and beat UCLA. They got Michigan State coming up on Friday night this week. And I believe Penn State might be on bye. I'm actually going to fact. Oh no, they are not. They play UCLA. I'm remembering now that is the big noon kickoff. But both those teams I've been pretty impressed with so far. Still 2 of the top teams within the Big Ten Conference. Let's move on to the top 5. And spoiler, in my reevaluating of teams, there has been some shifting here. But I mean, it should be no surprise at all that Alabama is the number 1 team in the country after that dominant performance against Georgia in the first half. I mean, it looked like Bama was going to come out and absolutely blitz Georgia and beat them down into the turf. Georgia, I think, showed you why. The people that were concerned about him, and especially concerned about him after that first half, Georgia's still a team that can go compete. Now, do I think Alabama got their foot or lifted their foot off the brake a little bit? Yes, I think they definitely should have pedaled to the metal and just really kept on going there with the momentum that they had. But Georgia stole a lot of it away. And look, I mean, if Georgia plays a lot cleaner of a game, if Carson Beck doesn't have that 4 turnover day, if the defense was able to defend Alabama, especially defend Ryan Williams, and he's a phenomenal talent, a little bit better, I think Georgia walks away with the win there in that game, the way the sort of series of events played out in Tuscaloosa this past Saturday. But Alabama was able to survive on the back of Jalen Milroe, on the back of Ryan Williams, the defense, and Xavier Sorey. Not Xavier Sorey, one second. Xavier Brown, not Xavier Sorey. Apologies, I don't know where the last name mix-up came from, but I mean, how about the 2 freshmen wearing number 2, Ryan Williams and Xavier Brown? Absolutely phenomenal talents, both of them are. But I mean, Texas jumped up 1 spot to number 2. I feel like overall, as of right now, the resume a little bit more impressive than the Ohio State Buckeyes. You could argue that Ohio State is the better team in terms of ranking purposes. Sorry, my apologies. 1 second. Someone sent me a notification. We'll get rid of that real quickly. But, there it is again. Okay. Ohio State and Texas, if you want to switch around 2 and 3, I'm not really going to argue with you too much. But this is a top 5 that I feel pretty confident in being the top 5 teams, right? Bama, Texas, Ohio State, Tennessee, Georgia, in whatever order you want to place those teams in. I'm fine with. I think that's your top 5 right now. I think they've proven themselves to be the best 5 teams in the country right now. And that is what I'm going to end this video on. So there's your top 5 order again. I think Tennessee ended up having a bye this past week. They got some tough games coming up again. The Georgia-Bama game was a classic. Ohio State beat down Michigan State. They get an interesting test with Iowa coming into the horseshoe, and then Texas there as well. In a couple weeks, they're going to go prepare for the Oklahoma Sooners in the first ever Red River rivalry in the SEC. But guys, that's going to do it here for this video. Please let me know what you guys think, and let me know your own personal top 25 in the comment section down below. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder, and I'll see all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.